Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Back for another week. What makes this week different than all others, and I've been doing this show since late March, back when it was actually cool outside and not 100 degrees or whatever it is in Kansas City or wherever you're at. Two new things. One, it's the first time I could say this during this show. I'm working a baseball game tonight, weather permitting. So back to work, exhibition game, Royals and Astros. Really excited about that. We'll continue doing the show every single day, usually at 9, sometimes at 12. And so that's the first piece of business. The second piece is that I've moved into a new home. I've joked for the better part of a few months that I was doing the show out of a walk-in closet, and the goal was to still make it look good. But it was time to shift things around a little bit. With a little bit of help from my friends at Kansas City Audio Visual. They helped me set up a brand new studio, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'm sitting in a big room, nice studio. KCAV, Kansas City Audio Visual. They build better environments for communicating and learning, everything from small businesses, big businesses, scoreboards, and technology in terms of the world of sports. So really excited just to be here in a new spot and actually feeling like I got this big old workspace and that I'm in a real studio. Little secret too, I'll use this thing for Fox and we'll do some interviews of players and coaches and all of that as we're going in a way that enables me to do that from home and then go down to the stadium. With all of that said, I have a great guest today, and I think people have heard me say this before. This is not necessarily a sports show, although sometimes I have sports guests on, and I would say that my guest today is someone that falls into certainly the sports world, but much more so than that. He has his PhD. He's a leader. He does happen to be a former athlete. I'll have to ask him because most athletes say once an athlete, always an athlete. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm joined right now by Dr. Brandon Martin, the Director of Athletics at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, home of the Roos. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm excellent today. Glad to have this opportunity, Joel. And I just want to begin by thanking you for having an indelible mark in Kansas City. You and I were on a panel pre-COVID, and I knew that you were someone who I wanted to be a supporter of mine, and one that I wanted you to really believe in our mission of what we're trying to get done at Kansas City Athletics. And so I just want to begin by thanking you for the mark that you've left on our city, the narratives and the stories that you bring out, on a weekly basis, and also the impact that you've had on the Royals and what they've tried to get done. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. It's kind words. And I told you before we came on that the day that I met you and we were on a panel, I was moderating that panel, and it was you, it was Bob Kendrick. There's no greater storyteller in Kansas City, in my opinion. It was Kathy Nelson from the Kansas City Sports Commission and Jake
Sure.
from Sporting Kansas City. I had the easy job. I just got to ask the questions, and quite frankly, that's as good of a panel as it can get, because any one of you could have just done the one-on-one and held the audience for the hour or whatever it was that we had. What I learned about you that day, I'm going to turn the tables on you. This isn't supposed to be about me, but what I learned about you that day, because it's interesting. I mean, I did a couple of years of some games at UMKC. I knew the old Chancellor Morton, that I really hadn't had the chance to get to know you yet, and you didn't know me. But what I saw from you that day was just a really heartfelt passion about what you do, about the university, and about people. And it almost gave me a glimpse into what you must have been like on the basketball court at USC, because I saw a lot of fire in you. Did I read you right that day?
No, you did. No, you did. You did, Joel. And, I think that day, I remember, it was sort of like a dreary day in Kansas City. It was rainy. It was one of those situations where we had to react on the fly. things were delayed in terms of the panel. But one of the things that I really I gravitated towards you because, I knew that you understood the job and the task that I was up against at UMKC. And so when you talk about passion and you talk about fire and you talk about the mission, that day, I feel like I let Kansas City know that we're for real. We're Kansas City's only Division I team. And I made sure that everyone knew that. And I really appreciate you for, posing the right questions for me to bring that out.
Well, I thought about this actually a lot. Certainly that day afterwards, I've seen the movement you guys have been making. I've been able to watch it from afar. There's a lot in branding here that goes on because, okay, it's one thing to say you're Kansas City's only Division I team. That's true. Now it's a matter of what you do with it. And to me, like when I drive down there by the university, it's a beautiful campus in this amazing city. Like there is a phenomenal opportunity here. This isn't like you walked into a situation where there's no hope. To me, you walked into a situation that's sitting there saying, take me to the next level, but we need the right person and the right people to do it. I understand there's some jobs where you walk in and you say, shoot, I'm just happy to have a job and there's no hope here.
Yeah.
But I look at the campus, I look at the possibilities. I'm not just talking about basketball either. Mm-hmm. And I see a beautiful place in our city. And so what I think I want to start with here is when you came in, we'll talk about the challenges, but when you came in, what did you see?
Well, I want to dovetail off of your point, okay, Joel, in terms of some of the things you said previously. In the first 30 days, I knew that I was sitting on the acres of diamonds of potential, of what Kansas City could be, of how we can build that premier Division I athletics department. And that our department our flagship sport is men's basketball and actually women's basketball now. I mean, we got to give full credit to what Coach Hoyt has done in women's basketball. But I saw we're sitting on the acres of diamonds. Less than a mile away, we have enough wealth. We have enough support. We have enough stakeholders to be able to take us to that next level of where we need to be. One of the things that I've discovered, Joel, is that this job has been void of a vision. It's been void of a vision, but it's also been void of a strategic plan. And it's been void of execution. And I've been very intentional about really focusing myself and my team on making sure that we hit all of those points. And each day when I get up in the morning and I think about what Kansas City athletics is, and we can talk about Kansas City athletics versus UMKC athletics when we talk about branding. Mm-hmm. But each day when I get up, I'm thinking about how can we push forward? How can we make a change? How can we make a difference, in the lives of that 15, 16-year-old kid who is intrigued by UMKC? But we have to find ways to evoke emotion, and we have to find ways to evoke excitement. And that's one of the things that I'm working with the university administration on, how we are branding ourselves and how athletics can be used as a tool for engagement moving forward. And that's a collective effort. And so it's not just about Dr. Martin declaring that this is what needs to happen. This is a collective effort of university administration, but also stakeholders, whether they be donors, supporters, or people, alumni, who want to be a part of our comprehensive excellence agenda.
You were having to come in, among other things, and build a culture
Yeah,
in a place that wanted to get there. It wasn't a
sure.
lack of wanting to get there, but it was very much and there is a lot to do with branding here. It's hard to brand something until you build the team, the culture, until you know what it is. And I think back all the time, very life changing for me. I mean, I speak to corporations now about culture, and that's not anything I ever thought about before. I also, when I came here in 2008, I'd come from St. Louis. I didn't grow up there. I tell people that seems to matter sometimes to people. You've probably learned that now, which side of the state and all that.
Yeah,
I
figure
didn't
that
grow
out.
up with that, so it doesn't make a difference.
Sure, sure.
But I can't. I was reading an article yesterday. I'm getting off track here, but that's what I do. About in the St. Louis paper about Yadier Molina, their future Hall of Fame catcher, and Adam Wainwright, longtime pitcher. Both of those guys were there before I left. In 2008, they were there in 2004 or so, and they're still there. The whole culture runs through them. I think they've had one losing season. That doesn't mean they've won championship after championship. They talked about you walk in there, it goes through them, and they've now passed it on to the next generation. So when I came here, I don't want to say I took it for granted, but that's just the way it was there. That was what they called the quote unquote Cardinals way. And I always say that if you have a culture, whatever the name of your organization is, the word way can go after it. The Cardinals way, the Royals way. There was no way when I got here. But Dayton Moore, who has been as impactful of an individual in this town as anyone I've known the last 12 years, the day I met him, he said, I want to build a culture here. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, this is a team that was in last place every year, had zero hope, one of the worst franchises in baseball. And he said, I'm not just talking about the 25 guys in the locker room. We think about basketball, the 15 guys in the locker room. I'm talking about the ticket takers and the beer vendors and the alumni and the sponsors and the fans and the accountant in the front office. And I'm talking about everyone. And then the Royals win it in 2015. You see 800,000 people at a parade, and it's like, wait a minute. In a day and age, even then, where we don't all get along, there's everybody on that there's your culture. And by the way, that was 8 years after I got here. So I just bring that up because, first off, everybody wants everything today. That's always been the case. But this is a process. And so it's a very long way of me saying, but using my examples of my history, is how deep of a process is this, and how much, because I know you already have, how much progress have you made?
Yeah. So I just wanted to go back to your first question about culture and how we've built our culture based on comprehensive excellence. And that's our mantra. That's our philosophy. That's how we operate. And so, when you build a culture that way, it's all about your staff. And I have two great deputy athletic administrators in Kurt Jacey, who's over our external relations, and Ursula Gurney, who is part of our internal. She's our senior women's administrator. She has been in the athletics department for 10 years, and she's a pillar of everything that we strive to do. But it's also about creating a championship culture. And sometimes when you say championship culture, that's a foreign language to a place that hasn't been infused with, the messages of competition, of who we can be and where we want to go. And so, we've talked about comprehensive excellence. We talked about building a championship culture, and all of those things are rooted in service to the community, service to our student athletes, service to each other. The other piece is that it was critically important to engender trust amongst each other, because I believe it was Stephen Covey that talked about the speed of trust years ago, and that's one of the books that I use to anchor our athletics department. The other piece to this, Joel, is the importance of over communicating in this time of crisis. And in this time of crisis, it's important to put feelings before facts. And so we've been so conditioned and so trained to look at data, and we make data-driven decisions. But right now, we have to invest so much in our people. And so that's also part of our culture. And then from a leadership standpoint, we are tasked with making sure that our student athletes are trained for leadership. Most of our student athletes, they won't play professionally, okay? Which means that they're going to have to be leaders in their respective fields, whether it be engineering, whether it be business, whether it be political science, whatever they choose, they're going to have to be leaders. And so we've really made leadership one of our core values. And then the last thing I'll say, Joel, is that we're creating a culture based on urgency. So it's not so much about, hey, we have this great operational plan. Some people might want to create a strategic plan, but everything that we do has to be. And that hasn't changed since COVID. It hasn't changed since, some of the social unrest that we've seen in our nation. That hasn't changed. And what I've had to do is really ensure our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff on really what anchors our department in terms of core values and in terms of the philosophy and how we want to move forward to engender trust with our external stakeholders. That's critically important.
Well, and I think in this time, a time that none of us have ever gone through, not like this, not collectively. I mean, we've had disruption in our country since the start of time. We will always have disruption. We've never had disruption in our lifetime that truly encompassed everyone every single day. So what you're talking about to me right now is no different than what the CEO of whatever name the company is talking about. And in this time, you mentioned the importance of communication over communication. In this time, I think you have to stay true to who you are, but you've got to work harder to make sure that you're bringing people or keeping people together and keeping people informed, because life is harder right now. So how have you approached that over the last 4 or 5 months? You're used to, with your athletes and your administrators, walking by them on campus, having a meeting, checking in on a practice, whatever it is, and you don't have that right now. And we know how much, I don't care whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or whoever you are, or whatever you are, everybody needs some form of connectivity in some form or another. So what have your strategies been in ramping up that communication and making sure that all that progress that Missouri, University of Missouri, Kansas City has made? How am I supposed to be saying this right now, by the way? Because I always said UMKC. It's a branding.
Well, no. Well, let's clarify that, Joel, and I appreciate that. We're always going to be UMKC.
Okay.
That we're part of the University of Missouri system. That's clear. But from an athletic standpoint, we are Kansas City Athletics.
Okay.
Okay. So, and let me just talk a little bit about that, just so it's clear. We are the only Division I team in Kansas City. We have 68% of our alumni that live in this region, and we believe that we can be Kansas City's team. And that's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
We've made some significant changes, as you know, Joel, with moving from Municipal Arena over to the Swinney Center, which has been fantastic. We've increased student attendance by 71%. We've done that. And that's really the key, getting the students to buy into it. We now have done a deep dive to understand who our fan is. And there's a lot of demographics. There's a lot of groups that we have to cover within our fan base. But we've mastered that in a short amount of time. And I want to give credit to my team for that. I want to give credit to my team. I've been a visionary for it, but I want to give credit to my team for really understanding who our fans are and what they need. And so when you talk about this period, one of the things that early on back in March and April, the prime directive, Joel, has always been about the student athlete welfare and well-being. We understand that, right? That's why we have jobs. I get that. But one of the things that I really considered is who's taking care of the head coaches? These coaches have had to adapt from, okay, now maybe I can't go into the office every day. Now I can't communicate with my team on a daily basis. Now it's a disruption of the norm and how they need to move forward. And so what I did, Joel, was I created this Rise Alliance. And the Rise Alliance was basically a knowledge sharing community where I can stay connected to my coaches and have a pulse on where they are at every given point. There's so much transition going on outside of, COVID-19, outside of the social unrest that's going on. But we also have name, image, and likeness happening, right? In this period. We also have a lot of changes. And so the new leadership, as I see it, Joel, is fluidity. We have to be comfortable with being fluid and making decisions probably a lot sooner and a lot quicker than we're comfortable with. But as we make these decisions, Joel, it really allows our coaches to have more trust in what we're doing. And so we can't wait to get data. We can't wait to get, maybe some information. And kudos to the NC2A. They sent information last week on some guidance with COVID-19. And I greatly appreciate that. But there's another level of leadership where I have to engender the trust with my coaches so that they feel that I'm leading us in the right direction. And so those are some of the things that we've done.
It's a lot. I sort of joked with you before we came on that if this awful pandemic had hit 1 year earlier, you'd be a few months into this one. And look, you've been a leader your whole life. I think I know that without knowing you that well. I'm guessing that you were a leader when you were playing. I'm guessing you were a leader in high school. I might be wrong. I mean, maybe it came later in life, but I sense that that's who you are, and
yeah,
the way you grew up and the values that you had that were instilled in you and that you're instilling in your children now and your employees.
Sure.
And everyone. That's just me reading people, but thankfully you had a year plus to hit the ground running. But you roll with what comes your way, and so here you are now dealing with this pandemic like any administrator in the country, sports or academics or both. What have you learned in these last 4 months? I keep saying that we have opportunity here, whatever it might be. What have you learned in terms of your role and the university in terms of opportunity?
I appreciate that question, Joel. And there's so many things that I've learned. There's so many different revelations, but there's also exposures. And I believe college athletics has been, exposed to some degree in terms of the fit that it has in higher education. And along with that exposure, I believe that there's things that we need to be intentional about as we accommodate and service the welfare of student athletes, and that's coaches, staff, um, and the administration alike. We all have to be able to do that. But in this moment, I believe that as we talk about, Black Lives Matter, and we talk about the things that have come up uh, throughout, nationally, I've chosen to take a stand to educate Black student athletes on how they can seize this movement and not a moment. And this is a time where they have a voice more than ever, Joel, more than ever, to really make a claim on the things that they want to see changed. But it has to be constructive, and it has to be courageous. And so I've made a point to do that. And I wrote a piece. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Joel, uh, on the 4th of July, and it involves independence and what that means for the Black student athlete. And I talk about understanding clarity of purpose. I talk about having a proper game plan in place. I talk about identifying the barriers that will preclude you from being successful. And so I think this is a critical moment for Black student athletes. And as a former student athlete and as a Black athletic director and as a Black professor, I play a lot of roles at my institution. I believe it's critically important for me to really be at the vanguard of this change. And I'm committed to it. And I've been really having conversations nationally about not only the article, but about this obligation for the Black student athlete. And I'll say this is really a next level of student athlete welfare and well-being. I think that term has been loosely used. I think it's been something that athletic directors have said, but really don't truly understand what it truly means, particularly as it means and pertains to Black student athletes. And I believe that I'm equipped to lead that charge.
Well, you have a lifetime of experience. To me, you're still a young guy too, but you have a lifetime of experience in so many roles of this. The player that takes the court for you can look at you and say, "Well, he was once in my shoes." The administrator that says, "Oh," and I'm not saying they all say this, "Oh, he's just worried about sports." Well, he's been on the academic side of things. They don't just hand out that doctor in front of your name. If they did, I'd have one too.
Yeah.
I haven't put in that kind of work,
Yeah.
but you've been on so many ends of it that I know that has to lead to that credibility. And then, as a Black man in this country, as this is all going on, I thought about this a lot too, because just look at the demographics of different sports. one of the things that has to be done in baseball right now, and this is a discussion I've had many times and will continue to have, but I'm not going to go off on too much of a tangent here, is that the numbers of African American kids that are wanting to play baseball are significantly down. They have to work on that. They have to have a locker room where it's not one or two guys. That's not typically the case in basketball.
Sure, sure.
Basketball. I've been in a lot of basketball locker rooms, and including yours, and that's certainly going to have more kids that are looking up to their athletic director and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, he has the same color skin as me." So, I ask you this because you have three kids. Your oldest is the age of a lot of those kids in your locker room right now. What are you telling your kids? What are you telling your athletes as a black man that has been through this issue of racial injustice, I don't know to what level, your whole life?
Joel, I think that's an excellent question. I'll start with the question about what I'm telling my kids. Each day, I'm very intentional about teaching them a lesson about what it is to be Black in America. Okay. I have three Black children, and I have two daughters, and I have a son. And so it's not a one size fits all approach. And so the way that I speak to my son is totally different than I speak to my daughters. But I give examples of adversity, and I give examples of reality, and I give examples of what it's going to take for all three of my kids to be able to navigate society in this world, being Black in America. And so I'm not going to argue that I have this perfect blueprint, but I think based off of my experiences and based off of my platform, I believe that I can really educate them about how to move forward. As it pertains to student athletes, let me just say this, Joel. One of the reasons, the main reason why I made a conscious decision to be an athletics director was because I wanted to use the platform of college athletics to elevate and engender change for Black males in higher education. And so if you look at the numbers, 1 out of 4 Black men who participate in higher education, is a student athlete. And if you look at it, well, they participate in the revenue generating sports. So when you have an overrepresentation of Black student athletes in those revenue sports, but you have an underrepresentation of people like myself who can guide, mentor, and be guardians for that demographic, it becomes problematic. And I think that's the exposure that I mentioned earlier. The exposure is that we don't have enough Dr. Martins in position of influence to be able to speak to that demographic and that population in a meaningful way for them to understand how they need to seize this moment and seize this opportunity and move forward with constructive change. And so that's really what this moment is all about, Joel.
And we see it across the board. I mean, I suppose just basketball alone might be better. Football might be better, but then again, how many Black head coaches are there? How many Black GMs are there? How many Black owners are there? And why? Like why should the opportunity be different? I remember as a kid, I've said this on the show before, that it was a big thing. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and then Chicago. It was a big thing when Randall Cunningham was the quarterback. And remember how big of a deal they made over Doug Williams being the Super Bowl MVP as a Black quarterback? It wasn't a quarterback. Why? Because there weren't very many. it there was so much racism involved in that without people even understanding. No one sits there now and says, "Oh, Patrick Mahomes, he's just the greatest quarterback in the world." Right? And so to me, and I don't know if that's a sign of progress, but I think about how different that would have been when I was a kid. So there shouldn't be anyone sitting there saying, "Oh, here's the athletic director, the PhD, who happens to be black." It should just be normal, and when your kids, and when I say your kids, by the way, I'm not talking about the three in your house. You,
Mm,
you know as well as I do that you have more than three kids at this point, but
yeah,
they should be looking at you saying, "This is an option in life. Like I can be the
yeah,
CEO, I can be the athletic director." That's a very obvious observation to me, but yet still a sign of how much work. Like you and I shouldn't even be having this discussion. Do you know? But I mean, we need to. Does that make sense? Like we need to have this discussion, but we shouldn't be
we
having
do,
it,
we
right?
do, we do,
So where are we at?
we do. Well, first off, I want to comment on you mentioned Patrick Mahomes, and let's just declare that he is the best quarterback on the planet. Let's just
No question.
okay. Let's just hey, I'm a converted Chief fan now. Let's just say that. Okay. Um, but as it pertains to your secondary question, um, it sort of goes back to the reason why I got into this business, and each day as I make decisions about marketing, each day as I make decisions about fundraising, personnel, compliance, whatever that might be, each day that I go to work, I want a young black man, and even a young black woman to be able to look at me as a model to say, maybe I don't quite understand what Dr. Martin does, but that's what I want to do. Because as you think about this on a macro level, this is a K through 16 issue that we're dealing with. And so sometimes the unrealistic expectation is for higher education to be able to solve all of the issues that didn't get resolved, at maybe the K through 12 issue level. But I truly believe, and I'm committed to being that model for not only the black male athlete, but also the black female athlete,
Mhm.
and how they make decisions and how they identify people that they respect. Because when you look at the black community, what's rooted and what's needed, Joel, is respect. We're all looking for a person who we can respect and look up to. And in my space and my platform, I'm that person. And so as they become more and more curious, I become a better mentor. I become a better teacher. I become a better guide. And I become that person that they remember 10, 15 years from now to say,
Mhm.
you know what? I had a conversation with Dr. Martin in his office, and that changed my life.
Mhm.
That's more meaningful than me going out and saying, hey, I got a $5 million gift to expand the Swinney Center, even though we know how important that is, Joel.
Mhm.
But that's more meaningful for me because I am doing my godly assignment. That's really what it comes down to, Joel.
Yeah. Makes complete sense. And, there's something to be said about what you feel, which is part of the story you tell. People remember the feel, which, by the way, the $5 million in Swinney and all that leads to a feel also. It's a little bit different, right? But ultimately, people will remember when we're talking about culture. Boy, I remember when that turned around and how much fun it was to go there, and we were all part of this thing. I mean, it all ultimately feeds into that one, large description of what I call culture. And so you're doing all of that. A couple things as we wrap things up. I think the question that is on everyone's mind, if you have kids of any age in any activity, and that includes those that are going back to school in the fall that are students, what is going on? And a lot of we don't know all the answers. You're obviously in on a lot of meetings, and you have perspective on things in terms of education and sports that many of us don't. But as parents here, we're wondering about what the high school year looks like, or my oldest is doing the football conditioning right now, and he's worried that they're not going to have a season. And of course,
Yeah.
every parent is wondering if they're going to have to be teaching their kids from home again. On and on and on. We're all going through this in some form or another.
Yeah.
Without asking for crystal ball, because this stuff seems to change by the day, and we're also trying to predict the health aspect of something we're still learning about. But what, at this point, do you foresee the fall and the winter looking like at UMKC?
I think that's an excellent question, Bill. I think it's a season where we have more questions than answers. I think it's a season of fluidity, and where we have to be nimble. I would argue that our fall season is going to be delayed, and there's a difference between delayed and canceled. So I want to be clear on that. But in between this time where student athletes are going to have time that they've never had before, as they negotiate between the two identities of being a student and an athlete. And so one of my intentions is to really educate and teach them and guide them through this period of what they need to do to seize this time. I wish when I was a student athlete at USC, I had opportunities like this to really embrace the student part of my identity, right? To really maximize that. I think these student athletes have that opportunity. And so I firmly believe that our fall sports are going to be delayed. As you know, we've transitioned from the the WAC conference and transitioned into the Summit League. And, we're in some pretty in-depth conversations about how we're going to move forward. And regardless of the final decision, and we need to get the presidents and the chancellors and the board involved before we make a final call, I really think we need to make decisions for the safety and welfare of our student athletes. And you know this, Joel, for so long, athletic directors have proclaimed that student athlete welfare is important, and but it hasn't been tested to the degree that it is now, right? Now we're being tested to see, well, how firmly do you believe in that welfare? How firmly do you believe in the safety of student athletes at the risk of economic advancement? And so we're in this weird position where I really believe that values and missions are tested. And so what I can say about Kansas City athletics is that I have a remarkable team of administrators. I have some of the best coaches in the country, and I have some of the smartest student athletes in our country. Our average GPA for our student athletes is a 3.4 GPA. I just want to say that. So we have some smart kids, and they make sound, good decisions. And so I feel that I have the people, and I have the tools, and I have the support of my chancellor, Dr. Molly Agrawal, who has allowed me to really make the significant and the tough decisions that I've had to make since being the director of athletics.
Well, I think we're all, certainly from a education and athletics standpoint, and this goes beyond the university setting, we're all just ready for everything to get back. I hear from people every day that just want to see Royals baseball. They're not even complaining that when this thing starts up here this week that there won't be fans in the stands. Yes, they'd like to be there, but they'll just be happy to have some of it. I know everybody's just going to be happy to get back to school. I mean, I got teenagers that are begging to go back to school. Never in my life did I think I would hear such a thing.
Yeah, right.
Since like kindergarten when it was cute to go to school. So
Yeah,
the world has changed. Final question. It's a lighthearted one, but
sure.
I feel like we should end this way. I remember your USC teams. I remember those teams back in the day. You're just a little bit old or younger than me, not much. Back in the day when I could religiously follow college basketball every single night, and I didn't have all these other responsibilities known as life. What was the scouting report on a young Brandon Martin? And could you get out there right now, mix it up with the guys, or at least win a free throw shooting contest?
Two really good questions.
I don't know.
The scouting report on Brandon Martin is, first of all, I was a high school All-American. I averaged 31 points a game coming out of high school, and went to a football playing institution, but played for George Raveling, who was a Renaissance man and taught so many different things in life. I can say that I was a pretty difficult guard, from a standpoint of I had strength, I could shoot, I could score, I could do a lot of different things. I think that my team makeup was a little challenging of the personalities that I had at the time, and I think our teams really didn't maximize their potential. But I think what people would say about Brandon is that he was a hard worker, that he was disciplined, that he cared about people, that he was a leader, and that's what I was, and that's what I continue to be as an athletics director.
Well, I was going to say that what you just described as a player is who you are now as an administrator and an athletic director. Could you win that free throw shooting contest?
If it's free throws, I can compete. Now, if we're competing, about something else, one-on-one game with, someone like Brandon McKissick, I probably would go into depression for about a week because I couldn't get to the spots on the floor the way that I used to be able to do. But one of the things that's important to me is that I stay connected to the student athletes, to the team. And it's not so much about how they perform on the court or on the field, but it's more about getting a pulse on where they are as young people and how they are navigating the campus and how they are navigating the world at that time. And so that's one of the, I guess, unspoken jobs of being an athletics director. That's beyond the spreadsheet. Right now, if we focus on spreadsheets, hey, we all need to be in counseling right now because it's depressing.
Yeah.
One of the things that we can do is transfer that energy into our student athletes and really make sure that they're on the path for success. That's why we should truly be in this business.
There's a lot going on. There always will be, though. It's just different right now, and that's part of leadership. That's the challenge that faces so many in your shoes. And I'm not just talking about at universities, but corporate America and beyond. That's true with the Royals. That's true with anyone. And so unique times, but as I mentioned before, opportunity. And so I'm really glad we got a chance to do this. I'm excited when you guys get back on the fields, get back on the courts, get back in the classroom, whether that's virtual or whatever it looks like. I'm encouraged. I'm not holding you to anything, but I'm encouraged at the language you used there about delay, not cancellation, because that to me at least gives some hope. And whatever it is, then you roll with it. I mean, that's part of life. So I'm grateful for your time today. I'm grateful also that you call this city home now. I mean, this isn't like yourself. This is not a place that I grew up, but we've been here 12 years now. You never know what the future holds, but you I know have come to learn that this is a great place to call home, and one that so many people are proud to do so. So I know that you have a part in that, and I appreciate you spending all the time today.
Well, Joel, I appreciate this opportunity, and I just want to, my closing comments would be that I appreciate people like yourself who have left an indelible mark on the city. You've brought out the narratives, you've brought out the stories of the successes of not only people working in sports, but entrepreneurs and people who own businesses, and all of the hidden secrets of Kansas City. And my goal is to really bring out Kansas City with the platform that I have. Mm-hmm. Kansas City is a tremendous city. And the people always make the place. The people make the place. And there's so many good people here in Kansas City. They've embraced me. They've embraced my philosophy. They've embraced my family. And I'm so thankful. So, and Joel, you're a part of that. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be on today.
And the same to you too. And you know, it's you're learning that, you know it. I don't need to tell you that. That's the beautiful thing about it when you're talking about people and places. You just have to live it, and then that becomes very easy to sell. And that's Brandon.
No
That's what you're doing and going to continue to do over at UMKC. So Dr. Brandon Martin, congratulations on the early success. I'm excited to follow it. I can't wait to get over to the gym at some point and watch it. I think
we got to get you to a game, Joel.
No, you know what? I think the last year that I was doing a little bit of UMKC basketball, I was doing 6-7 games a year. Was McKissick was a freshman, and you could see the now I'm getting off on the sports tangent here. You could see the it factor in terms of person and leadership, and I didn't get to know him that well, but I could see myself but I could envision what he would look like as a senior when it was his team. That's one of the beautiful things, you know, this in the cycle of college sports, of watching these kids grow up. So love to come over and happy to support you guys in any way.
Well, once we get through this, Joel, of clarification on what our fall season is going to entail and what it's going to look like, you know, how about we do a Joel Goldberg night, you know, to bring you on and to celebrate you and the mark that you've had on our city. I would really like that. We can do a jersey for you and bring you on. How about that?
Well, I'll need to make sure I invite as many friends and family as I can so that you actually have people that
it'll be your day, Joel.
You don't want to scare people away. You don't want to scare people away.
No, I actually think it'll be more people who come to our game. So we'll have to have more security.
No, stop it.
People to come out.
I would be honored to do it. We'll talk about that and anything else too. I mean, you know, in all seriousness, I'm not saying you're not being serious, but in all seriousness too, anything to help. I mean, this is, I said it. Anybody drive over or get over by campus, and it's just to me it has a feeling, and you're right. It is the only Division I school here, and it's a beautiful place. So, Dr. Martin, I appreciate the time. We'll continue the discussion. Hang tight for one sec here, but again, thank you. I really enjoyed this today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Joel.
All right, Dr. Brandon Martin, the athletics director of athletics at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC, the Roos. A lot of fun to have that conversation and really to get a sense of leadership and what he is able to do, trying to do with the help of so many others too. It's never a one-man show, and he highlighted his team and so many involved in that effort. Again, a couple things. If you want to get a hold of anything in terms of the program, kcroos.com. You can see all about not just men's and women's basketball, but all the student athletes over there and what they're able to do. Couple of thanks out here. If you've been watching this 86 episodes in, I think it's suddenly better lit. I have more room to move. I can breathe a little bit. I'm out of my walk-in closet. Actually, I'll pull a suit out today for the first time because I'm going back to baseball. So you can watch us tonight on Fox Sports Kansas City, provided the weather holds up. A huge thanks to Kansas City Audiovisual, kcav.com. They can put together a podcast studio like this or do full offices and beyond. And as always, thanks to Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. They've been along with me for this partnership pretty much every step of the way, encouraging me to be able to bring stories to you. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow at 9 a.m., streaming all over the place. Thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.